Bergen, Norway, 5 things to see and do. Hi, I'm Lori, a senior solo traveler, and I recently spent a day in Bergen. Since the weather was rainy and windy, I decided to concentrate on 5 things to see and do that were all within walking distance from the downtown area. I'll share those experiences with you, as well as a couple of honorable mentions, and at the end of the video, share some advice for senior and solo travelers. Number 1, Funicular. Since it was raining dramatically, I donned my raincoat and umbrella and headed first to the Funicular, which was a short distance from my hotel. I purchased the ticket at a kiosk, but there was also a ticket booth if you wanted to speak to someone. I managed to snag the best view by stepping into the first car and facing downhill. The funicular ride rose directly to the top viewpoint without any intermediary stops. There were a couple tunnels we rode through, but otherwise there were amazing views looking out over Bergen. Once to the top, I stepped out onto a large terrace. It was a spectacular view of the area, although it was a little difficult to capture with the wind and rain. There is also a restaurant up top that was currently closed. Hiking trailheads that led you in 2 different directions were a short distance from the funicular. With the poor weather, I decided to pass on hiking, but I walked around the entire viewpoint area and discovered a troll garden, picnic areas, and a fun playground. There was also a coffee cafe and gift shop in the funicular building. After about an hour of exploring, I headed back down, again with some magnificent views. 2, Bryggen. My next destination was Bryggen, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is an historic wharf by the Hanseatic League, which was a powerful medieval commercial confederation of merchant guilds and market towns. The area along the harbor is a charming row of shops, however there is more than meets the eye. If you step farther into the building's alleyways, you will find some interesting rustic architecture. There are many pubs, cafes, bakeries, and shops situated throughout the massive complex. I thought the stairway was interesting, not exactly ADA compliant. Of course, I had to go and see what was up the crooked stairs and was greeted by trolls and all sorts of Christmas merchandise. Bryggen is certainly a fun place to wander around, and if you are hungry, a good place to grab a bite. 3, Bergenhus Fortress. Somewhat adjacent to Bryggen is the Bergenhus Fortress. It is one of Norway's oldest and best preserved fortifications. It is a large complex that consists of several buildings surrounded by a large park-like area. There are 2 buildings that you can enter, each for a fee. I paid to go up in the Rosenkrantz Tower that gets its name from a governor who was in power during the 1500s. The building has dungeons on the ground floor, residential rooms for the governor higher up, and positions for cannons on the top floor. It's a little tricky winding your way up multiple staircases to get to a viewpoint from the top. And once you get there, it's a bit of an obstructed view, but it still gave a great vantage point of the harbor. It was interesting to see the tight quarters and fascinating architecture of the tower. I did not go into the second building, but instead walked around the complex. There's a beautiful tree-lined path that leads to the edge of the fortress. You can see some of the original cannons lined up along the edge. If you are a military history buff, you will enjoy the medieval history here. Number 4, Church of St. Mary. Also in the immediate vicinity is the Church of St. Mary, which is a parish of the Church of Norway. The construction of the church is believed to have started in the 1100s, making this church the oldest remaining building in the whole city of Bergen. There have been a few fires that burned the church, as well as several renovations and reconstructions, most recently in 2013. I had to pay to enter and was pleased to see the unusual chapel. When you first walk in, you see the apse directly in front of you. 1 wide corridor in the middle and 2 corridors on each side. Your eye is drawn to the golden display of religious figures and the crucifix above. The ceiling with its numerous arches is simply painted, but accented with the 12 apostles and St. Paul. The painted figures are attached at regular intervals along the side walls. The pulpit that hovers above the pews is especially intriguing. It is ornate with multiple carvings of babies at the bottom and women representing various Christian virtues surrounding the middle. Above the pulpit is an ornate top with a domed and elaborately painted underside. I've probably been in over 100 cathedrals during my travels, and this one is certainly not the grandest. However, I was captivated by all the carvings, which were unusual to me. The two outer hallways are lined with numerous wood paintings, all very interesting. I questioned the $8 admission price, but was glad I paid it, as I found the landmark church to be quite fascinating. Number 5, Fish Market. At the apex of the two sides of Bergen Harbor is an outdoor fish market. Now, I've been to local fish markets in other countries, and they were places where the fishermen sold their daily catches right off the boats. This didn't appear to be that, but there were numerous places to purchase fish in varying treatments, such as fish and chips and paella. There were other stands that sold local favorites, such as sausage and ice cream. I passed by these two men making paella and decided I'd go for it. I was served this huge portion on a paper plate and given a wooden knife and fork. I questioned the scary-looking large shrimp on top, but eventually tackled it. It was quite tasty, very messy to eat, and no, I couldn't eat the entire plate. So those are 5 places I would recommend visiting, and here are a few more honorable mentions. I spotted this zigzag park from across the harbor and decided to check it out. It looked like Lombard Street in San Francisco. However, I didn't see any cars using this one. It was lined with some pretty buildings on one side and looked to be a nice park to relax. I then headed to Lille Lungsgårdvannet, which is a small 5-acre lake in the center of the city. Since it is an octagonal lake with a fountain in the middle, I assumed it was a man-made lake. However, it is a natural lake that was historically connected to a nearby bay via a short strait, but the strait was filled in 1926. At one end of the lake is a park with a pretty gazebo and flower garden, flanked by gorgeous historic buildings. It was raining quite heavily, so I didn't stay long, but I imagine this area is wonderful when the sun is shining. Now, if you do nothing else in Bergen, you should admire the architecture. The town is chock full of striking historic buildings. It seemed like every street I was on was eye-catching. Here are some examples. For solo travelers, the city is very safe and friendly. Everyone spoke English, so communication was easy for me. It did seem like everything was a little expensive in terms of admissions and food, so if that is a concern, check the exchange rate before you plan a trip. For senior travelers, the area I covered was mostly flat, so walking wasn't a problem. Bergen does rise from the harbor though, so if you stay outside the city center, you might find yourself climbing hills. For anyone with mobility issues, you will want to mind your step on the cobblestone streets, and you may want to skip the Rosenkrantz Tower. As always, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments section, and if you've been to Bergen and can add to the discussion, please share. We'd love to hear from you. Check out the Senior Solo Travel website, where all my videos are laid out in an easy-to-access format, and the Travel Facebook forum, where you can interact with other travelers. I have left links to those sites, as well as others from the Scandinavian and Baltic trip, in the description below. And if you'd like to follow my senior and solo travel journeys, please like and subscribe. Next stop, Flam, Norway.